Well, good morning. What an absolutely beautiful morning to wake up to here at Lake Ballard. We're really excited. We're going to walk out on the Salt Lake this morning and see what footage we can get. It's absolutely magnificent. Check out the rising sun here.
Magic hour. You haven't got a lot of time. You need to be up in the dark and out. We're a little bit late, but the softness of the light is so beautiful. And then as the sun comes up, the warm hues slowly disappear, but you get these lovely shadows that are spreading across the lake.
Really grateful to be here, to have this magnificent place all to ourselves. And the only thing that you could hear was this really, really quiet whisper of gentle wind, just smooth across the lake. That was it. This is why we do what we do. Love it.
In this episode, our Western Australia adventure continues, and it's time to head north to Australia's Golden Outback. We start in Kalgoorlie, the heart of Western Australia's Goldfields region, exploring its rich history and hidden gems. We take an adventure and head off the beaten track, taking us further into the rich history and stunning landscapes along the Golden Quest Discovery Trail, from historic gold mining ghost towns to breathtaking natural wonders. We show you the ancient allure and beauty of Lake Ballard, where shimmering salt flats and intriguing sculptures create a mesmerising landscape that inspired a creative experience like no other, where in the silence and isolation, time just stood still. So join us as we take you along on a captivating adventure. Get ready to enjoy the surprise and wonder of this outback experience.
Well, good morning everyone. So, a couple of days ago we pulled in off the Nullarbor and tucked up for about a day or so in a little town called Norseman, just at the end of the Nullarbor run. We stocked up, had a bit of a rest. A fantastic night last night with some really dear friends who are just coming off the lap of Australia. So our paths happened to cross at Norseman. And it was so good to see them. So we parked up in the RV park and settled in for the afternoon. And suffered out the 45-degree heat for the afternoon. But we made it, and everyone's going their own way this morning. So we've just settled in for the drive. We're now heading about 2 hours north of Norseman. We're really looking forward to checking out Western Australian outback town.
There was so many large mining trucks on the road, and you had to be particularly careful driving along and talking to them on your UHF to just tell them when it's good to pass. Copy mate, caravan in front of you. Would you like me to slow down so you can pass? Yeah, go for it. Yeah, and I like how they sort of are really appreciated. So as when they're past you, they'll put their left indicator on, and then they'll put their right indicator on to say thank you. The size of the sky bit. Just keeping on this one.
I thought that was never going to end.
finally got into Kalgoorlie, we found there was a 72-hour RV rest stop there close to town. So we set up there and we really enjoyed the 3 days we were there having a look around Kalgoorlie.
The next day we headed into Hannon Street, which is the main street in town, and there we find the information centre and have a look at the beautiful old buildings.
Yeah, it was kind of like going back in time. I sort of envisaged that street with the old buildings, the sandstone buildings, that they were there with dirt roads, with horse and cart going up and down. It's a beautiful street, Hannon Street, and we spent probably the whole morning there and grabbed a coffee as we walked around.
There was so many old beautiful buildings in their original state.
Something for me. Then he kept walking on down the road.
One of the things we found while we're here in Western Australia is that there's quite a few of the national parks that you have to have a pass for, which is additional to your camping fees. So we've just been into the National Parks office here at Kalgoorlie, and we've got an annual pass now, which is a sticker up on the windscreen there. Being here a whole year, we decided to get the annual pass, and so wherever we go now, we don't have to worry about it.
Around mid-afternoon, we then headed over to the fantastic Western Australian Museum of the Goldfields. And this was a really cool place to learn more about the culture of the area and the history of the area.
Yeah, there's lots to see there. The first thing that caught my eye was there's a vault there, and it actually has gold nuggets in it. So what we found was that the vault was the original storage vault of yesteryear, where they put the gold in there. So today it is still used as a vault.
Yeah, it's incredible. It actually holds the largest collection of gold nuggets in the state. That was pretty impressive.
Yep.
So the wonderful thing also about the museum is it does showcase the rich Indigenous culture and layered histories of the Eastern Goldfields, and also how the gold rush transformed the region. So it's really well worth a visit if you want to know, what went on in the background of these towns and its history.
How can I help you today, madam? Would you like a loan, or would you like to make a deposit?
Give us $2 million. Geez, caravans have come a long way, Pete.
They certainly have. This one hasn't even got a bed in it.
So lastly that day, we headed up to see the giant super pit.
Yeah, this super pit's an opportunity to see the big gold mine that is virtually on the other side of the town, and they've created a viewing area for you to look down on it. They have an area where you can walk through. It's caged, but you can push your camera through and take some photos.
So this super pit is one of the largest open pit gold mines in Australia in terms of size, producing around 500,000 ounces of gold each year, which is around 14,000 kilograms. For every 1 million tonnes of ore extracted from the super pit, there are between 250 and 300 kilograms of gold.
We began to head north from Kalgoorlie and into more of the Goldfield outback.
Pete's just filling up the water. What's the situation, Pete?
Just checking my app and watching the water go up, and we might do 2, maybe 3 tanks, which will last us about a week.
Yeah, so we're heading up into heatwave over the next 4 or 5 days, so yeah. We are heading north from Kalgoorlie, and we're really excited to be travelling up to some of the hidden jewels of the Goldfields outback. So it'll be really interesting to see the country out there and the landscapes, but also to check out some of these notable historical places. Like there's a handful of old pubs out there. There's a ghost town called Gwalia. We're going to go and check that out. And also we're going to be looking at this morning an old game, like it's called 2UP. It's an Australian game that Pete was telling me was started in the wartime. So tell us a bit about 2UP, Pete.
2UP, it's an Australian gambling game, very popular around World War One. The trick of it is that you have a little board and you have 2 coins on there and you throw it in the air and you bet on whether it's going to come down as 2 tails, 2 heads, or a heads and a tail. And these days it's been pretty much outlawed by the government, and I think there's 2 places where you can watch or you can play it legally, and one's just outside of Kalgoorlie, which was where we're going. Just out of town there is the original old 2UP bush ring. Standing there in all its rusting glory, its old galvanised tin, handmade timber with wire and rope strapping it together. Imagine the men surrounding that, betting on these 2UP games. There was lots of gambling going on. There was money exchanging before. They would bet just before it got thrown into the air. So you could imagine how frantic it would have been with the bets on.
In the current day now, it's Australia's only legalised bush 2UP school, which actually only operates on certain days.
Yeah, Sundays at 2 p.m.
As Pete put the drone up, I took a walk through the eucalypt trees as I was really captivated by the stunning colours, nature's palette on the bark of these trees as it was peeling off. Absolutely beautiful natural tones.
I am just so inspired by the colours. I mean, if you're an artist or you're wanting to have a play with some paint and experiment a little bit with colour and you get a bit stuck, I mean, all you need to do is go to nature. Have a look at this. Look at these colours in these beautiful gum trees. Like here you've got beautiful rustic orange, beautiful yellowy green, sage green, and you come around and it's just this beautiful burnt orange. It's all here. I mean, look at this beautiful yellowy olive green sitting next to the gorgeous orange, the rust red, the charcoal, the grey, back up to the sage green, beautiful rust colours. I have never seen any part of nature where the colours are not in symphony right next to each other. It's all perfect. So when I'm in a landscape, I really like to look at a few things, but to simplify it, I have a look at the macro and the micro. So I have a look at the big scale of things, like the contours of the lands, the skies, you know, the huge horizons, everything that's big and seen from a distance, or even perhaps a bird's eye perspective. But I also tend to have a look at the micro. So I get up close to what's before me and I have a really good look at that. And look closely at things, like get right into it and see what you can see. The smaller shapes. Look closely at markings on fallen leaves and bark. I can't wait to grab out my paints and my papers this afternoon, and I'm going to be inspired by what I've seen here today.
We're now heading further north on the Golden Crest Discovery Trail and really excited to be on the South Drive adventure. It runs from Kalgoorlie in the south, way up to Laverton in the north, and it passes so many historical sites. It's really well worth checking out. So our first port of call then was a small ghost town called Kookini. At this point we were really getting out there further into the desert. We got right off the beaten track and discovered this old living ghost town really high up in the Goldfields. Established in 1907 and at that point had a population of 3,500 people. Yet 100 years later, only 20 people were living there.
During its day, it actually had 11 hotels, a town hall, even swimming baths, and check this, they had 7 brass bands and of course a brewery.
So what exists today as you drive through the town and through the remains is really just the shells, the original forms of the place.
You can see the footprint of the buildings. A lot of them now are totally collapsed and the brickwork is just loitering around the ground.
Heading back from Kookini towards the main road, we took note on Wiki that there was a historic dam called Niagara Dam. It was built in 1897.
Obviously you have to have water to have a town, so they built this dam out of town, 20 minutes drive, and it fills up with water, and from there they're able to pump it back into town. But they needed a lot of water for the steam engines because during that time the railway line was coming through and was expanding very quickly. It obviously was the best means of transport in those days, particularly in such isolated areas.
That afternoon, we came into Gwalia, headed in on the back roads of Leonora. Camp was high up on a hill in the Gwalia township, pulled up stumps for the night.
So we arrived there to find that there was nobody else there, and basically it's the car park out the front of the museum. So we made ourselves at home, had a drink and watched the sunset.
We were actually blown away as to how close this campsite was located, right on the edge of this gold mining super pit. It was quite bizarre.
Yeah, you could see where the gold mine had slowly encroached and taken the part of the township away. There's even an old swimming pool which they've kept for historical reasons, that they built for the miners to have a swim, and it's loitering on the edge of the mine.
So Gwalia was a former gold mining town located 233 kilometres north of Kalgoorlie and 828 kilometres east of Perth in Western Australia's Great Victoria Desert. It was called Sons of Gwalia Mine and operated from 1896 to 1963. That time produced over 2.5 million ounces of gold. Wow.
Yeah, it's amazing. Today Gwalia is essentially a ghost town, having largely been deserted. Its main source of employment being the Sons of Gwalia closed in 1963. It was because there was a piece of machinery that failed and it had to be replaced from London, and it was very expensive. So overnight, everybody lost their jobs, and within a very short period of time, it was a ghost town.
Interestingly enough, the gold mine is now back in operation, and it's a real juxtaposition because you've got the really old Gwalia historic ghost town sitting right next to it. So you've got the old and the new right beside each other. So it's very rich in history.
The next morning we were excited to get up and have an explore of the old ghost town. And I've got to say, it didn't let us down. Again, one of those places as if they walked out. The buildings are still there, where they lived, their grocery stores, the bank. So walking through them, there is tables and chairs, prams, tricycles.
Yeah, it's quite airy in a way, and I think we were reminded of the beauty in the decay and the nostalgia of bygone days, and also really how nothing ever stays the same.
Beautiful old pub there that's still standing in all its glory. It was built by the Western Australian government in 1903. Now a ghost building. It was used by the mining company, reopened as its office, but now derelict and just left standing there.
So whilst walking through the ghost town, we were nearly at the end of the walk and a car pulled up beside us, the window rolled down, and a lovely elderly gentleman started talking to us. So we took the time to listen.
What was your name?
Neil Biggs.
And it was absolutely beautiful. And he said to us, "Did you know that I used to play here as a small lad with Herbert Hoover's son?" In fact, he said, and he pointed up to the corner we were standing, he said, "Right there in that paddock was where I lived, in a little cottage." And it went on from there. The stories were amazing, and we felt really grateful for this very unique experience where we got to hear stories firsthand from this lovely gentleman.
Yeah, I mean, the chances of that happening was just so remote.
Oh, wow.
One of our main jobs was we had to teach the Turning kids to speak English.
We're interested in Hoover.
Yeah, no, his son was, as I said, in 1942, when we came here, I was 4 years old, and Hoover's son was the same age as me, and we used to play together up at Hoover House.
And did he have any brothers and sisters, this young man?
Not at that stage, no.
Yeah.
After he left here, I don't know, yeah.
When did Hoover leave?
I can't remember now. Too
Yeah.
bloody old.
And what was his role here?
Oh,
What was Hoover's role?
He was, we were in the mine. They owned the mine.
Wow, because he was 23 when he came here.
Yeah. My whole life was school here. Every teacher we had was an ex-A grade sportsman from Perth. And those teachers, they never ever had morning or afternoon tea. It was always, come on boys, get your boots on, get the cricket bat, yeah. Days there's no planes, double road between here and Kalgoorlie, yeah. I still wouldn't leave Lenore.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Neil, it's been lovely to chat to you.
My pleasure. young lady.
Yeah.
Thanks, Neil.
Have a good one, mate. No, I
Yeah,
come
thanks.
here.
Later that morning, we headed over to the Gwalia Museum, which is located right next to the camping area, and it's also located right on the edge of the super pit. It was absolutely beautifully curated and put together. It had a contemporary gallery and a museum and a historical museum.
So when you come to places like this, it's always the people that make a place, isn't it? And this morning we met this fellow here, Neil Biggs. It was absolutely amazing. It just made our experience here really enriched and just gives it a whole new meaning.
This is the man who started it all, who would go on to be the President of the United States in 1929, Herbert Hoover.
And there are all these lovely artifacts from yesteryear there. And you wander up slowly up the hill towards this beautiful old building where Herbert Hoover lived. These days it's a bed and breakfast, but they have a small cafe there. Try their amazing scones.
Boy, we sure tucked into them. That night we headed back to the van. Again, it was really, really hot. So we battened down the hatches, turned on the aircon and had a good rest that night.
The next morning we got up and went to Lake Ballard. It was only about 3/4 an hour drive, but we could already feel the heat in the day, and it was a bit of a concern to us that we were going into such an isolated area. We had plenty of food and water, and we drove slowly to make sure that the car didn't overheat.
From checking out the weather reports, it was going to get up to 45 to 46 degrees. However, with a beautiful van such as our Zone van and all its creature comforts and all its capabilities, we felt really confident heading out there for 1 or 2 nights.
Yeah, we have a generator for emergencies, and we use that when we need to. There was nobody there at Lake Ballard. We put the generator on and we basically stayed inside till the late evening till it cooled down, and there was a few less flies.
Our experience at Lake Ballard to us was a really special time. The silence, the solitude and the feeling of the place was just so incredibly special.
An opportunity to be at Lake Ballard, just us there, gave us a chance to hear this peace and silence that existed there for hundreds and hundreds of years.
Late that afternoon, we headed out onto the lake when things started cooling down a little bit.
It is a salt lake, so we weren't sure exactly how our footings would go. It was dry and solid, so we ventured out into the lake.
We put the drone up when we got round to the other side of the island and said to me, "You won't believe what I'm seeing, Tan." So I went over and I had a look at the monitor and we could see geometric patterns and we wondered what they were, and of course it soon became aware to us that they were actually the walking tracks from the thousands of people that visit these sculptures on the lake each year, and actually see the patterns as they would walk from one sculpture to the other. There's about 50 of these sculptures out on the lake, placed at quite a distance from one another. So it was absolutely beautiful, and it also gave us a solid understanding simply of the scale of the lake and its perimeters. The sun dropped, I decided I would actually lay in the outline of one of my mandalas in preparation to revisit it in the morning. This was an experience in itself, drawing into this lovely, salty, crusty earth. And as I drew into it, it revealed this rich, beautiful rust red colour. So just before we went to bed that night, we set the alarm because we knew that we didn't want to miss waking up really early the next morning for the sunrise. Pete had been checking the weather and we knew there was going to be no clouds. So feeling excited, good night's sleep, woke at 4 the next morning.
It was lovely and cool, and we enjoyed getting out onto the lake.
Well, good morning. What an absolutely beautiful morning to wake up to here at Lake Ballard. We're really excited. We're going to walk out on the salt lake this morning and see what footage we can get. And yesterday afternoon when we got here, I traced in a really large mandala shape and ready for some more marks to go in it this morning. It's absolutely magnificent. Check out the rising sun here. And the only sound I can hear is this really quiet whisper of wind through the old she oak trees that are here. I'll get back to the van and get some gear organised. So this is certainly the time of day to capture some amazing light, Pete.
Yes, it's a magic hour. You haven't got a lot of time. You need to be up in the dark and out. We're a little bit late, but the softness of the light is so beautiful. And then as the sun comes up, the warm hues slowly disappear, but you get these lovely shadows that are spreading across the lake.
Yeah, you really only do get a small window of opportunity with this warm light. So, yeah, we're out there in it.
So I've just brought out my drone, my 35mm digital DSLR and the old faithful iPhone. And so with the light so low, I find myself having to be really careful about the exposure. Find that, this morning I did a couple of shots without the tripod, and you can tell that it's soft. It's not sharp because there's not a lot of light out there, and that means that the old camera says, well, I've got to make the exposure right, so I'll slow the shutter speed down because I'm holding it. Just a little bit of movement makes it soft. So early morning, late afternoon, there is a point that you have to use a tripod, but then you can then use long exposures if you want to.
So we're walking towards the Mandala. It's really hard to see where I created it out here, but yesterday evening when I made it, I chose to place it or locate it in between two of the statues. There it is. Really grateful to be here, to have this magnificent place all to ourselves. And the only thing that you could hear was this really quiet whisper of gentle wind, just smooth across the lake. That was it. This is why we do what we do. Love it.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode. Next time, we take you with us to explore the natural wonders of Western Australia's Cape Le Grand National Park and soak in the captivating beauty of Lucky Bay. Thanks for watching, and if you're enjoying our content, be sure to like and subscribe. Safe and happy travels always.